Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Farmer. His name is Raj Giri, and we are here to talk all about financial information. Raj, thank you so much for taking the time to come over and share some of your experience.
No, thanks. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me. We've been doing wrestling podcasts for a long time, so this is something different. So I'm excited.
It's a big departure from the shows we've done in the past together, but that doesn't mean that if you watch wrestling, you can't watch this and learn some things. And if you don't watch wrestling, guess what? You don't need to watch wrestling to watch this show. So that's the beauty of it all. But I'm very excited to chat about this because I feel like, especially in this day and age, money is something that so many people know they need to understand, but they don't understand. And they don't really know what to do. And I think that this will be a good place for a lot of people who are just starting to sort of get an idea of maybe steps they can take.
Yeah, but again, this isn't investment advice. This is more to be like just stuff. The stuff I've done over.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 47 years old now. I started investing back in the late 90s. Made a lot of mistakes, especially early on, and learned from those mistakes. And through the decades I've been in around investing. Now I'm getting old. Just I've learned a lot of times the simplest stuff is the easiest, and so there's for people that have really been paying attention to investing and the different types of investments and things out there. There might not be a lot of new information in these, but hopefully it might. But again, this isn't supposed to be investment advice. It's just stuff I've done.
Right. So anyone who is listening and or watching this, again, this is not advice. This is just some sort of things that we have done that have been successful. And of course, everyone should do their own research and look into things and make sure you take that due diligence and make sure that you cover your bases there. But these are just things that have worked in the past for us, and we want to share them.
Yeah, and everyone's goals are different. Like if I'm looking at certain investments, it's going to be completely different from when I'm 65 or if I was 18. So it all depends on where you are and your goals in life. If you're fickle with money, if you're not, there's just everyone's different. So this is just kind of what what I've done and what you've done.
For sure. And there's definitely levels of risk that go into it. How risky do you want to be versus how conservative do you want to be and all that good stuff. And we'll talk about that. And I want to start, though, because this is episode number 1. And so this is where a lot of people may be coming in at episode 1 themselves, so to speak, not really knowing where to go, not knowing where to start. If I am let's say an 18-year-old kid and I just got a job and I have nothing financially, I'm just kind of blank slate. What's the first step you would recommend someone do?
So this is what I did. And
sorry, not recommend. What have you done?
right. Yeah. Yeah, and this is stuff that I do recommend. I do recommend it to, this is stuff I'm telling my daughters. With my daughters, we have 529 accounts, and a lot of this stuff we're gonna get into more detail in separate videos. But when I got out of college, I had a bunch of credit card debt with different credit cards. I had a Best Buy card with a bunch of with a big balance on it, and several others. And so I just had a lot of debt. And my first job out of college, it was a web development job that it was good, but it didn't pay all that much. So it wasn't like I could easily just cover my debt. So I think that's always the biggest thing. And that can always be the hardest, is getting out of debt. But still, the first thing, even before getting out of debt, my first job, they offered a 401k. And I was careful to not max out my 401k, but to put in as much as my employer covered back. So with 401k accounts, so a 401k, it's a company sponsored retirement account where you contribute a certain amount, and there's a maximum per year. Right now it's $20,500, and employers can match part of that contribution. So let's say you're making $50,000 a year and your employer will match 5%. that's $2,500 in free money. So you're putting in 2,500 and the employer is matching that 2,500. So you're getting 100% in return on your investment. So that is a no-brainer. That, credit cards that, they can be anywhere from 15 to 25%. That's not going to beat that 100%. So that was definitely the no-brainer, definite investment that you should take. So, that was something I was careful to do, I didn't want to go over that. I just went up to the amount that the employer was matching.
So when I get a job somewhere and I see that they offer a 401k, the first thing I should probably do, well, I guess first thing I should look and make sure that if they offer the 401k, and if they do, kind of see what the percentage they match is. And that would obviously be the percentage of what you earn per year that they are going to match, and try to maximize that, because like you said, it's 100% return. And that means the money you spend on that will basically double your money for free.
Right. Up to how much they'll match. So if they match 5%, you put in 5%, that's 100%. But you can put in more than that. It's just that your employer won't match that full amount for the most part. It depends. And every employer is different. Most of them have matching, and they can be anywhere from 5 to 10%. So that's definitely one that is a definite, that I've always taken at any job.
And a lot of people may say, yeah, I got to pay my credit cards off first. And we'll talk about that in a second, obviously. But if a credit card is charging 25%, you're still getting a bigger return on putting the money in the 401k, because that's 100%.
Yeah, as the part that the employer will match. Yeah, for sure.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And so again, that's the big hang up there, is make sure we're only talking about the percentage that the employer matches and not just whatever you put in there.
Right. And once I got out of debt, I fully maximized my 401k, even though the employer didn't match the rest you could put in. But before that, it was just up to what the employer matched, so I can at least get that 100% and then move on to debt.
And the 401k then is the company basically investing your money and trying to basically use that to help build your retirement as well. So it's not just the match that they give you, but the value will go up beyond that as well.
Right. Yeah.
Theoretically.
And theoretically, right? Like if you started earlier this year, it's probably down if you're putting it into the market. And usually, different companies use different firms for their 401ks. A lot of them will have like money market, just basic. It's almost like a savings account. So for something like that, you would have basically doubled because your employer matches that, and that grows a little. Actually, right now it's with interest rates pretty high, it's getting 3-4%. Usually they'll have a broad market fund, which is what I've always done. And broad market funds over time usually average 8% a year.
Right. So it's not just that matching, but long term you're going to get more out of it than that as well. But we talked about the credit cards. And again, if I'm that 18-year-old kid just got a job, or if I'm a 20-year-old kid or 25-year-old, or I guess at any age these days, sometimes I've got money I owe. And let's say like a credit card, or I've got things I owe. I've got to pay rent. I got to pay the credit card. Now you're telling me I got to invest money. I've got to pay for food. What are some of the things you would recommend, or what would you do, or did you do when you were presented with all these different things coming out at you, and how did you handle the money and what goes where?
Well, what I did was, the first thing I did was taking into account what I owed and how much I was making. And then, and I think now you have software programs like Mint that are a great tool. I actually still use Mint, just creating a budget, coming up with seeing where you're spending money, taking into account what you have and what you owe, how much you spend, where you can save, what expenses aren't necessary. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is really taking into account, making a list, seeing where your money is going, and seeing where you can, kind of cut spending. Because once you get cut spending, that's money saved that can go towards your debt.
And a lot of times, just by taking a second and looking at what you're actually spending, you can see so many places that you spend money that are easy to cut off. I just personally, for me, I I had Apple TV and I liked Ted Lasso, and I realized Ted Lasso was the only thing I was watching on there, and I was caught up. So why am I paying every month waiting for the next season?
Right.
Cancel Apple, wait until it comes back, and then get Apple again. Now that's just a couple bucks, but all if you do that with everything, it starts to add up to a
Yeah,
lot.
no, you could look at your cell phone plan if there's a way to cut 30 bucks a month on your cell phone. If you're not really watching cable
Mm-hmm.
and you're paying for that, seeing if that's something you can get rid of, like cable and satellite now, those, that's well north of $100 a lot of times, sometimes more than that, sometimes more than 200. Moving to something like Sling or YouTube TV, if you definitely want that satellite. So
Yeah.
just finding ways where you could cut those costs and kind of sticking to that budget. If you have your morning coffee, if you have a coffee maker at home, make your coffee at home instead of going out and getting it. Because, I know people use Starbucks as an example all the time, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's $5 here, $10 there. It adds up.
It absolutely does, especially over the course of time. And as we talk about the course of time, we talk about everyone looking at their finances, and you may find that you have a credit card here, maybe a Macy's card over here, maybe a another department store card, maybe another credit card here. If I'm this person and I've got all these different credit cards and all these different places that I'm paying money to, what have you done in the past? And I should say, because you did mention Mint earlier, I should say we don't have any sponsors on this show, so anything we talk about, we're not being funded by them. So it's all
Right.
just what you've done in the past, or if you were in that situation, what you would do. So that said, let's say you got a couple department store cards, you got a credit card. That's where most kids are these days, to be honest. What would you do if you were back in that situation?
So what I did do when I was out of college, it was, a lot of times with credit cards, you get those balance transfer checks.
Mm-hmm.
They say you get 0% on balance transfers, and there's a 3% fee or something. So I use those. I got a credit card, and I use those, and I use that to pay all the higher interest credit cards into one. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, I paid that 3% fee on all those balances coming in, but now I'm paying 0% for a year. And so that was what I did. And then I kept that away. So I didn't use that credit card. That was just my consolidation, almost like a loan. And then I set up a monthly budget to where I could pay that off in 10 months. And then for everything else, I use cash or check, and or a ATM card, bank card. And I was able to do it. And once you're able to do it, that's only part of the that's only part. You got to
Mm-hmm.
kind of stay that way. But I know a lot of people. If that's not an option, there's always, if you can get a low interest loan. I use SoFi. I use several banks, but SoFi is one of the ones I use. And I looked there today, and I think they have personal loans that it says it goes from between like 7.99 percent interest to 23.43. So these loans can have, and that 23.43, that's the same as a credit card. So there's
Right.
no benefit in doing it. So definitely, if that's an option, that's something worth looking into. But especially if you can get a low interest. But yeah, that was what I did. Have you ever had to do something like that?
Yeah, so it's something that I've done in the past. When I was younger, I was that kid. I was like, "Hey, you'll give me something at the store today, and I don't have to pay till later. That sounds like a great deal." So I was that person. I got a lot of credit cards, and similar thing. What happens is when you're able to consolidate them too, especially if it's a loan. Well, I should say, I guess, just consolidating in general is if you have 5 cards and they all have minimum payments of $50 a piece, you're looking at now $250 in minimum payments a month, and those minimum payments go nowhere. Where typically, if you put it on one loan, the minimum payment is smaller. But if it's a loan, even then the minimum payment goes more towards the what you owe than what on a credit card. And if your minimum payment's lower, if you're disciplined enough, and what I try to do is you still try to pay the 250, if that makes sense. You still
Right.
try to pay as much as you can, but it goes down faster. And with a loan, you don't have that temptation of going, well, I paid it down by, $100. Maybe I'll go buy some more coffee or whatever the case is,
But
because the loan doesn't let you keep borrowing.
well, if there is money you're not using in the loan and you're going to just use it to, buy other stuff, then it's probably not a good idea.
Right. But
And
that's,
yeah,
but that said, it sounds like in our stories here, we were very fortunate. We were able to consolidate and we were able to get it down into one card, and get it into one place. But some people, again, especially if you're a young person, your credit's not the best, and maybe the loan lenders do see that you have a bunch of money you owe. If you were in a spot where you couldn't get the loan, maybe you don't have those balance transfers, maybe you don't have the ability to consolidate them all, what would you do in that case?
well, there's a couple different methods that people use. There's the Dave Ramsey method. It's called the Snowball method, where you pay the smallest balance first, because it basically gives you a boost. It makes you happy to get rid of one of the balances right away. But that can be costly, because there's also the Avalanche method, and that is pay the highest interest rates first, and then the lowest interest rates last. So you're attacking your most expensive, credit cards or debt. And but if you have a credit card that's 21% with a low balance, and another one that's 23% with a high balance, then it might be worth it to take that 21% and just get rid of it, because it'll be a lot easier to get rid of. And so NerdWallet has a good calculator of where you could kind of enter in, what your balance is, and what the interest rate is, and you can compare which method would work. So we'll link to that in the comments. In the description below.
Yeah, something that's very powerful to do either of those, by the way. And you make a good example. If you have, like, if all your interest rates are roughly the same, then as I said before with that minimum payment thing, if you have one credit card that has like $100 on it, and then another credit card that has $5,000 on it,
Right.
Just pay off that $100 credit card, and then ideally you take what you were paying on that $100 credit card and you add that on top of what you're paying towards the 5,000, and that starts to pay that off even faster than if you were paying minimums on both of them.
Right. Yeah, but if you have one that's 4,000 with the 20% or a 15%, and one that's 7,000 with the 25%, so that's where the calculator comes in handy. Yeah.
Right. The math gets pretty tricky, and that's why having access to things like NerdWallet is so helpful, because it does the math for you and will tell you what the best route to go is either way. But either of those methods, I think, it's smart, just because I think anytime you have a plan, you're in a better space than if you're just kind of winging it, which I think a lot of people do when they first start trying to do all this stuff. But that said, even if you are, you're doing all this, you kind of alluded to it a second ago, as you're paying things off, though, you're going to have access to that money again on credit cards, and you've got to be a little bit careful about how you're using your money at that point.
Yeah, the biggest thing, if you are able to get out of debt, the day that comes, the biggest thing is to make sure you keep cutting spending. Do what you're doing. Don't get back in those bad habits. I pretty much have not had credit card debt ever again since the 90s. I use a lot of credit cards, but I pay them off completely every month. So, I get the 2% rewards on one, I get 5% on my Amazon Whole Foods one, and I'm never paying any interest. So kind of using them to my advantage, but I don't have any credit cards where I pay interest. And I think that's the thing. If you can get out of debt, and just, if you feel like having a credit card will get you back into the bad habits where you're overspending, then it's probably better to just get a bank card, a debit card, or use check the old fashioned way, or do something like that. Because, going back to your old habits, you're just going to end up in the same problem again.
Yeah, one thing I definitely recommend against is when I started paying things off, you always get this I think as a human, you get this desire, like, I want to celebrate that I paid off my credit card. And to do that, I'm going to go spend on my credit card.
Let's go to the club.
Yeah, you got to fight that temptation and just say, not yet. It's that delayed gratification. But something that happened, it's very easy and easy for us to say, don't use your credit card, don't go buy Starbucks and whatnot. But sometimes things happen and it's out of your control. And I say this as someone who, my living is made at live events. I host events, I DJ, I do stuff like that. 2020 rolled around, and guess what? Oh, Jack Farmer didn't have work for a while. And credit is something that you sometimes need to live on. Ideally, you shouldn't have to, though.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in that case? What would you do to prevent yourself from having to lean on a credit card maybe during a time of trouble?
And yeah, I mean, again, this is like, and this is something that's pretty standard across the board. I think you'll see tons of videos about it. Is to have an emergency fund, and once you're out of debt, then that's before you start investing. And we're going to get a lot of our future videos are going to be about investing in the stocks and mutual funds and bonds and different things like that. But before you do that, these are kind of the steps for me that I had to take before I could get to that stage. And having that savings account, having money that's liquid, that's easy to access. So if you lose your job or something like that, you have some funds that you can go to. So having an emergency fund, they say 3 to 6 months worth of living. I like to be on the safe side and have 6 months and have that set. And right now, you have savings accounts that are yielding above 3%. It's just the highest they've been in a long time. And I think our next video, we'll talk about some of those and where you can find some of the best savings deals. But that is definitely the next step, is build that emergency fund.
Right. And you'll know how long 3 months and 6 months worth of savings is if you do what we said at the beginning, which is take stock of what you spend, take stock of what you make, and understand that this is how much it's going to take to live. And again, it's easy to say, I'm sure it'll be fine, but the world just experienced 2020 where everything changes and you may need to be able to live off of money. And I've always believed money is a bit like air. When you have a lot of it, you don't need to worry about it. But when you don't have enough, it's the only thing that you can think of.
Yeah.
So having that backup plan and having that savings is so important. And also, I just think maybe mentally, this is just my opinion, but I feel like mentally, spending money out of your savings account takes more. It's more of a manual process than spending money on a credit card. And so when you're thinking about taking money out of a checking account or a savings account as opposed to a credit card, it's harder. And if you make it harder on yourself, then you don't waste money on those little things that credit cards typically, cost you.
Right.
But we talked about savings accounts and having money set aside. We do want to talk a little bit about longer term savings. And I know we're going to get probably more into it down the road, but for people, I got my 401k, I'm taking care of my credit cards, taking care of my sort of short-term emergency fund. What's something I can do more proactively to save for the future?
Yeah. So I think the first step, once you get, past all that, is to get a Roth IRA. And we'll cover this more in a future video. But there's two different kinds, traditional and a Roth. But basically, these aren't employer sponsored. You do them yourself, but that would be the next step. That's the next thing you got to get. And we'll get into more details on those in a separate video.
Yeah, lots of stuff there. Very easy to get that going. And I believe those are all things that you can ask you can get those started with your bank or whether it be online or an investment company. Lots of places you can get the Roth IRA set up.
Yeah. Yeah, my current, so I have a traditional and a Roth, but my current Roth I have with Fidelity, and we contribute to our traditional, we contribute every year.
All right, and so, yeah, that's definitely something we're going to get more into. It is the building block of a good retirement plan there. I think that does it for our opening video. I definitely want to make sure everyone hits the like button, comments, shares, subscribes. Let us know in the comments what questions you have, maybe some things that weren't clear, or maybe if you have questions about what we said, or this is your exact situation, let us know and we'll take a stab at it and see if we can help you out there. But also, like I said, hit the like button, comments, and hit the little bell so it reminds you when we have new videos coming up. Raj, very fun chatting with you and very interesting to see where this goes. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'll see you soon.
All right. See you soon.